The glass walls of Tolu's office reflected the warm afternoon light, giving the space an air of elegance. Everything was in place: polished mahogany desk, sleek leather chairs, and the faint scent of expensive perfume lingering in the air. She leaned back in her chair, listening intently. Across from her, 3 well-dressed men sat, their expressions serious. The conversation was low but deliberate, each word carrying weight. "The shipment must arrive without complications," one of the men said. Tolu's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "That's your responsibility. I expect results, not excuses." The men exchanged glances. One of them nodded, then they all stood. "We'll handle it," the first man assured her. She watched them leave, her manicured fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. A moment later, she picked up a folder and flipped through its contents: documents, numbers, names. A quiet sigh escaped her lips before she closed it with precision. To anyone watching, she was just another successful CEO, running a thriving business. But beneath the surface, Tolu's world was far from ordinary. The night air was thick with tension. A dimly lit warehouse stood in the middle of nowhere, its silence broken only by muffled groans. 5 men knelt on the cold concrete floor, their hands tied behind their backs, fear evident in their eyes. Tolu stepped forward, her heels clicking against the ground. Her gang stood behind her, watching in silence. She crouched in front of one of the captives, tilting her head. "You had one job," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "And yet, here we are." The man trembled. "Please. We didn't mean to." She sighed, straightened up, and pulled out her gun. "I don't do second chances." The gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Then another, and another. When it was over, Tolu wiped the gun clean with a handkerchief, handed it to one of her men, and walked out without looking back. "Clean this up," she ordered. The heavy metal door swung shut behind her, leaving only silence and bodies. The dining table was set with elegance: fine china, crystal glasses, and a warm glow from the chandelier above. A young woman sat between her parents, gracefully slicing her meal as she listened to her father speak. "You've been working so hard lately," her mother said, a proud smile on her face. "Tell us, how is everything at the foundation?" She set her fork down gently. "It's been fulfilling, Mommy. We just completed a new shelter for displaced families. Next week, we'll be distributing food supplies." Her father nodded approvingly. "That's wonderful. You've always had a heart for helping people." She smiled, her demeanor warm and composed. To anyone watching, she was the perfect daughter: kind, responsible, and deeply compassionate. Her mother reached for her hand. "I always pray for you. The world needs more people like you, my dear." She squeezed her mother's hand in return. "Thank you, Mommy." The dinner continued with light conversation, laughter filling the air. A perfect family moment, a perfect daughter. The dimly lit parking lot behind the prison was empty, except for a few shadowy figures. Tolu stood with her arms crossed, her sharp gaze fixed on the 2 prison officers in front of her. One of them shifted nervously. "It wasn't easy, but we did as you asked." From the side, a van door slid open. 3 men stepped out, their wrists still bearing the marks of handcuffs. They looked relieved as they saw Tolu. She smirked. "Good. Now, where are the others?" The second officer motioned to a different van. The door swung open, revealing 5 bound and gagged men, new prisoners. Confused and terrified, Tolu took a step forward, inspecting them. "They'll do." She turned back to the officers and handed them a small, heavy briefcase. "Pleasure doing business." The officers nodded, quickly grabbing the money before disappearing into the night. Without another word, Tolu's men climbed into a waiting SUV. The new prisoners were dragged toward the van. Tolu glanced at her watch. "We're done here." She got into the car, the engine roaring to life as they sped off, leaving the exchange in the darkness behind them. The sun cast a golden glow over the community center, where volunteers moved with purpose. At the heart of the activity, a young woman stacked food supplies, her hands moving swiftly yet gently. A little girl ran up to her, holding a book. "Thank you for this." She smiled warmly, kneeling to meet the child's gaze. "Keep reading. One day, you'll teach others." Nearby, an elderly woman struggled with a basket. Without hesitation, she stepped in, lifting it effortlessly. "Let me help, Mama." The old woman chuckled. "Such a kind heart. May you always be blessed." She simply nodded, her expression serene. A journalist approached, microphone in hand. "You've been doing incredible work. How does it feel to change lives?" She wiped her hands on a cloth and smiled. "It's fulfilling. Everyone deserves a chance at a better life." The journalist exchanged a look with the cameraman, impressed. "The world could use more people like you." She only smiled again before turning back to her work. Everything about her radiated warmth, compassion, and selflessness. And yet, something about the moment felt too perfect. The private lounge exuded wealth, soft leather seats, expensive wine on the table, and a quiet atmosphere that ensured privacy. Tolu sat across from Chief Olalekan, an influential figure whose power stretched across industries. He took a slow sip of his drink before speaking. "I hear you've been making moves. Smart ones." Tolu smiled, crossing her legs. "I don't waste time on anything less, Chief." The old man chuckled, nodding. "That's why I agreed to this meeting. I like people who know what they want." He leaned forward. "Tell me, what do you need from me?" Tolu rested her hands on the table. "Support, access, protection. And in return, you'll get a cut from every major deal." Chief Olalekan studied her for a moment, then smirked. "You're bold, but boldness alone won't keep you in this game." She met his gaze, unwavering. "Neither will hesitation." A brief silence. Then the chief let out a deep laugh, impressed. "You remind me of myself when I was younger." He extended a hand. "Consider it done." Tolu shook his hand firmly, sealing the deal. Business was always about power, and she was here to claim hers. The evening air was cool as she stepped into the house, carrying two large bags filled with provisions. The scent of home-cooked food lingered in the air, a comforting reminder of warmth and family. Her mother looked up from the couch, surprise flashing across her face. "Aw, you brought all this?" She smiled, setting the bags down. "Just a few things you might need, Mommy." Her father adjusted his glasses, peering into one of the bags. "Wow, all kinds of fruits. You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," she said simply. "You've always taken care of me. Let me take care of you too." Her mother reached out, holding her hand with a soft squeeze. "You have such a good heart." She chuckled lightly. "I just want you both to be comfortable." Her father nodded approvingly. "We are proud of you." She glanced around the familiar space, her expression filled with quiet contentment. This was home, and she would always do her part to keep it that way. The night was alive with the roar of engines and the screech of tires against the asphalt. Two black SUVs chased a smaller sedan down an empty highway, their headlights cutting through the darkness like sharp knives. Inside the fleeing car, the terrified men gripped the steering wheel, desperate to escape. "They're getting closer," one shouted. Gunshots rang out. A bullet shattered the rear windshield. The driver swerved violently, panic overtaking skill. Then it happened. The car spun out of control, skidding off the road before flipping over. Metal crunching against the pavement. Smoke billowed from the wreckage as groans of pain filled the air. Tolu's lead enforcer lowered his gun, watching the scene unfold. From the back seat of one of the SUVs, Tolu's voice was calm. "Leave them. No sirens, no witnesses. Just the quiet hum of their engines as they drove off into the night." Another mission complete. Tolu's phone buzzed on her desk. She glanced at the screen. Mom calling. She sighed, then answered. "Mom, my dear, how are you? It's been a while since we saw you." Her mother's warm voice filled the line. Tolu leaned back in her chair, staring at the city lights through her office window. "I've been busy, Mom. Work." Her father's voice joined in. "You're always working. When will you come home?" Tolu's grip on the phone tightened slightly. Home. A place that felt distant, though it wasn't far. "Soon," she said, forcing a smile they couldn't see. "I'll visit soon." Her mother sighed. "We miss you, my child." Tolu closed her eyes briefly. "I miss you too, Mom." The call ended. For a moment, she sat still, phone in hand. Then, just as quickly, she placed it down and returned to work. The hall buzzed with quiet conversations as guests took their seats. The charity program was in full swing, with volunteers moving around, ensuring everything was in place. She sat among the attendees, her eyes scanning the stage as the next speaker was introduced. "Please welcome Mr. Albert Adesanya." A round of applause followed as a tall, confident man stepped onto the podium. His presence commanded attention, yet there was an air of humility about him. He adjusted the microphone and began speaking, his deep voice filling the hall. "We all have a role to play in making the world better," he said. "It starts with the little things: helping a neighbor, giving a child hope, believing in people even when they don't believe in themselves." She listened intently, drawn to his words. There was something genuine about him, something that made her chest tighten just a little. As he spoke, she found herself smiling unconsciously. By the time he finished and the hall erupted in applause, she knew one thing for sure: Albert Adesanya was someone worth knowing. The house was quiet, but her mind wasn't. She sat on her bed, absent-mindedly scrolling through her phone. Yet her thoughts kept drifting back to the event, back to him. Albert Adesanya. There was something about the way he spoke, his confidence, his passion. He wasn't just another guest speaker. He meant what he said, and somehow that had stayed with her long after the program ended. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over his contact. Should I? Her heart pounded slightly, but she shook off the doubt. With a deep breath, she tapped on the message box and began typing. "Good evening, Mr. Albert. This is..." She paused, bit her lip, then erased it. Too formal. She tried again. "Hello, Mr. Albert. I attended the charity event today, and I really enjoyed your speech. Your words were inspiring." She read it over. Simple. Direct. Nothing too much. Before she could second-guess herself, she hit send. Now, all she could do was wait. The receptionist led her through the sleek, modern office, stopping in front of a glass door. "Mr. Adesanya is expecting you," she said with a polite smile before stepping aside. She took a steadying breath and knocked lightly before pushing the door open. Albert looked up from his desk. In the moment he saw her, a broad smile spread across his face. "You came." She returned the smile, stepping inside. "I hope I'm not disturbing." "Not at all." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please, have a seat." She settled in as he leaned forward, his interest evident. "It's really nice to meet you in person. Your message the other night was unexpected but refreshing." She chuckled softly. "I just felt your speech deserved appreciation." They talked about charity work, about life, about little things that made them laugh. The air between them felt natural, easy. At some point, Albert leaned back, studying her for a moment. "You know, you have this calmness about you, like someone who genuinely cares." She lowered her gaze briefly, smiling. "I try." The conversation continued, flowing effortlessly. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely at ease. Albert tossed his keys onto the table and sank into the couch, rubbing his temples. The evening had been pleasant, unexpectedly so. She was different, easy to talk to, yet something about her felt familiar. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Have I seen her before? The thought nagged at him, just out of reach. Her face, her voice, there was something about her that stirred an old memory. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't place it. Shaking his head, he exhaled and grabbed a glass of water. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but the feeling lingered. Tolu sat behind her polished mahogany desk, her expression unreadable as the man across from her slid a thick envelope toward her. She picked it up, weighed it in her hand, then opened it just enough to glimpse the neatly stacked bills inside. Satisfied, she placed it down and met his gaze. "You know the rules," she said coolly. "No mistakes." The man nodded quickly. "Everything is in place. The shipment arrives in 3 days. No loose ends." Tolu leaned back, tapping her manicured nails against the desk. "Good. If anything goes wrong, you know the consequences." A slight tremor passed through him. "Nothing will go wrong." She offered a slow smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let's hope not." With a dismissive wave, she signaled him to leave. As the door closed behind him, she exhaled, turning her chair toward the city skyline. Another deal sealed, another step ahead. The restaurant had a quiet, elegant, soft lighting, gentle music, and a view overlooking the city. Albert pulled out a chair for her before taking his seat, smiling as he did. "I hope you like this place," he said. "It's one of my favorites." She glanced around, taking in the ambience. "It's beautiful." The conversation flowed effortlessly as they enjoyed their meal. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and the little things that made them happy. Albert found himself drawn to her warmth, the way she listened, the way she laughed. At one point, he leaned forward, studying her closely. "You're different from most people I know." She raised a brow playfully. "Is that a good thing?" He chuckled. A very good thing. The night stretched on, filled with laughter and unspoken understanding. Albert couldn't shake the feeling that being with her felt right, like he had known her forever. And yet, there was still something about her that he couldn't quite place. The evening felt perfect. Albert walked beside her, holding a small gift bag. "Are you sure about this?" he asked with a chuckle. "Meeting the parents already?" She smiled. "They'll like you." As they stepped into the living room, her parents greeted them warmly. Her father, seated with a newspaper, looked up and nodded in approval. Her mother smiled, taking Albert's hand. "Welcome, my dear. This young man has a good head on his shoulders," her father remarked, nodding approvingly. Tola smiled. Everything was going well. Then the front door opened. Albert turned casually to see who had arrived, but the moment his eyes landed on her, a strange tension filled the room. The woman standing at the doorway froze, her sharp gaze locking onto him. Then, with a slow, deliberate step forward, she spoke. "Albert Adesanya." Albert's brow furrowed. There was something unsettling about the way she said his name, like she had been waiting for this moment. "I've been looking for you for years," she continued, her tone unreadable. Albert blinked, confused. His mind scrambled for recognition, but nothing came. "Who is she?" Before he could respond, she scoffed lightly and walked inside without another word. The air in the room shifted. Albert turned to look at Tola, his thoughts racing. "Who was that?" Tola hesitated, then finally said the words that changed everything. "My twin sister, Tolu." Albert barely heard Tola's words before he excused himself and hurried out of the house the other day. His heart pounded as he drove home, his mind racing. Tolu. How do I know her? Why was she looking for me? The moment he stepped into his apartment, he went straight to his study. He yanked open a drawer, pulling out an old file one he had taken from his late father's belongings years ago. His hands trembled as he flipped through the documents, scanning receipts, letters, and newspaper clippings until he saw it. A faded group picture. His father stood in the center, surrounded by business associates, but his focus wasn't on them. It was on the young woman in the background. Tolu. She was there, in his father's world. Albert's breath hitched as the memories flooded back. The fire, the blood, the night his family was wiped out. And now, he was dating her twin sister. The morning air was crisp, but the tension inside the house was thick. Tolu stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "Tola, you need to stop seeing Albert." Tola frowned, taken aback. "What? Why would you say that?" Their parents exchanged glances. Her mother spoke first. "Tolu, that's a strong thing to say. What do you know about this young man?" Tolu's jaw tightened. "Just stay away from him." Tola stepped forward, her voice firm. "If you have a reason, tell me. Otherwise, I won't just walk away from someone I care about." Tolu's eyes flickered with something unreadable. But instead of answering, she turned on her heels and walked out. Silence filled the room. Tola and her parents were left staring after her, questions hanging in the air. Albert in the driver's seat of his car, he focused on the road. Despite the storm raging inside him, "Tolu wants me dead just like she killed my family 8 years ago." His grip tightened on the armrest. Staying in the same city as her was a death sentence. He had no choice but to leave. His phone vibrated. Tola. He watched the screen, her name glowing in the dim car interior. His heart clenched. He wanted to answer, but what would he even say? That her twin sister was a murderer? That he was running for his life? The call ended. A second later, another one came in. Still, he didn't pick up. Albert closed his eyes, forcing himself to stay strong. He had to disappear before it was too late. Tolu leaned back in her leather chair, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the polished desk. Her men stood before her, waiting. "Find Albert," she ordered, her tone sharp and unwavering. "I don't care where he is or how far he's gone. Just bring him to me." One of them hesitated. "Boss, he's probably trying to disappear." Tolu's lips curled into a smirk. "Let him try." She sat forward, eyes narrowing. "He has something I need. A document." She picked up a pen and spun it between her fingers. "If he won't come back willingly." Her gaze darkened. "Make sure he doesn't have a choice." The night was thick with humidity as Tolu's men moved through the city, their eyes scanning every corner. They had checked his office, nothing. His house, empty. One of them growled in frustration. Where the hell did he go? Another man, leaning against a car, lit a cigarette. Boss said he couldn't have gone far. We keep looking. A third man, tapping away on a laptop, smirked. If he's using his credit cards, we'll find him soon enough. Their leader nodded. Good. Spread out. Albert Adesanya won't stay hidden for long. With that, they split into groups, vanishing into the shadows, determined to find their target. Tola walked into Albert's office building, her heart pounding with unease. She had called him multiple times, but he never answered. Something felt off. Approaching the front desk, she gave the secretary a hopeful smile. Good morning. I'm here to see Albert Adesanya. The secretary's expression remained neutral as she glanced at her screen. I'm sorry, but Mr. Adesanya is currently out of the city. Tola's face fell. Out of the city? Yes, ma'am. He didn't mention when he'd be back. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. Did he leave a message for anyone? The secretary shook her head. No, he left in a hurry. Tola swallowed hard. Something was wrong. But what? And why would Albert suddenly leave without telling her? Tola sat in the dimly lit living room, arms crossed, her foot tapping impatiently against the floor. Her mind was spinning, frustration bubbling under the surface. The moment the front door opened, she sprang to her feet. Tolu! Tolu barely glanced at her as she stepped inside, removing her heels. What now, Tola? Tola marched toward her. Where is Albert? What did you do to him? Tolu smirked, tossing her shoes aside. He left, didn't he? That's all that matters. Tola's hands balled into fists. You had something to do with it, didn't you? Tolu's expression darkened. She stepped closer, her voice low and deliberate. Leave Albert alone, Tola. Tola held her ground. Why? What are you hiding? Tolu exhaled sharply, her patience thinning. If you don't stay away from him, you'll get hurt. Tola's breath hitched. Are you threatening me? Tolu gave her a long, unreadable look. Then, without another word, she walked past her and disappeared into her room, leaving Tola standing there angry, confused, and more determined than ever to get to the truth. Albert sat across from the detective in a quiet cafe, his fingers gripping a worn-out file. His voice was low, urgent. Tolu isn't just a criminal, he said. She's a murderer. The detective leaned forward. You have proof. Albert exhaled sharply, flipping open the file. This document. He tapped a faded contract with signatures at the bottom. My father and Tolu made a deal years ago, but she betrayed him. And then, he swallowed hard. She killed my entire family. The detective studied the papers, his brows furrowing. This is serious. He met Albert's gaze. If we're going after her, we'll need more than this. Albert nodded. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Tola sat on the couch, her phone clutched tightly in her hands. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. No calls, no messages. Albert was gone. Her mother sat beside her, rubbing her back gently. My dear, you have to stop crying. Tola sniffled. I just don't understand. Why would he leave without saying anything? Her father sighed, sitting across from her. Maybe he has a reason, Tola. If he cares about you, he'll reach out. Tola shook her head. Something isn't right. I can feel it. Her mother exchanged a worried glance with her father, then pulled Tola into a hug. Give it time, my dear. If it's meant to be, you'll see him again. Tola buried her face in her mother's shoulder, her heart heavy with worrying. Albert stepped out of the hotel, adjusting his jacket. He had been cautious, always looking over his shoulder, but tonight, he felt a strange sense of unease. Across the street, a black SUV sat idling. Inside, Tolu's men watched closely. He's on the move, one of them muttered. Albert got into his car and drove off. The SUV followed at a steady pace. A few blocks away, at a deserted intersection, the first gunshot rang out. Albert's car swerved as bullets shattered the windows. He slammed on the gas, but the attackers were relentless. Another shot. Pain exploded in his side. He gasped, gripping the steering wheel, his vision blurring. The gang pulled up beside him, ready to set the car ablaze when sirens blared in the distance. Damn it, cops. One of them yelled. With no choice, they sped off, leaving Albert bleeding behind the wheel as the flashing red and blue lights approached. The emergency room doors burst open as paramedics rushed Albert inside. His shirt was soaked in blood, his breathing ragged. He's lost a lot of blood, one of them called out. A doctor hurried over. Get him to surgery, now. As the hospital staff worked frantically, Albert's consciousness faded. The last thing he heard before everything went black was the beeping of machines and hurried voices calling his name. Tola's phone buzzed in her hand. She had been staring at it for hours, hoping Albert would call. But when she saw an unknown number, her heart pounded. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A male voice came through, rushed and tense. "Miss Tola, it's Albert's PA." Tola sat up immediately. "Albert, what happened?" "He was attacked, shot. He's in critical condition." Tola's breath caught. "Where is he?" The PA mentioned the city and hospital. Tola grabbed her bag, already heading out of the house. "I'm on my way." Tola rushed into the hospital, her heart pounding. She barely noticed the sterile white walls or the hushed voices of nurses as she made her way to Albert's room. When she entered, she froze. Albert lay on the bed, pale but awake. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither spoke. Tola stepped closer. "Albert, what happened? Who did this?" Albert exhaled, his face tense. "Tolu." Tola frowned. "Tolu, my sister." Albert nodded weakly. "She's not who you think she is, Tola. She's a criminal, a murderer. She killed my family." Tola's stomach twisted. "No, that's not possible." Albert struggled to sit up. "I have proof, but I need your help. There are documents proof of her crimes. If we get them, she'll finally be exposed." Tola shook her head, disbelief washing over her. Could it be true? Could her sister, the one her parents adored, be a monster hidden in plain sight? Tolu leaned back in her chair, swirling a glass of water in her hand when her phone buzzed. She answered without hesitation. A voice on the other end spoke cautiously. "Boss, Albert survived." Tolu's grip on the glass tightened, her jaw clenching. "Are you telling me he's still breathing after everything?" "Yes, he's in the hospital, but he's weak." Tolu exhaled sharply, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "Weak isn't dead." She set the glass down and stood. "Finish what you started." The call ended. Tolu's expression remained unreadable, but inside, she was already planning her next move. Albert stepped into the quiet hotel lobby, glancing around cautiously. His body still ached from the gunshot wounds, but he had no choice. Staying in the hospital meant he was an easy target. Tola walked beside him, her face tense with worrying. "Are you sure about this? You're not fully recovered." Albert gave a weak smile. "I'll be fine, as long as I stay hidden." Once they reached the hotel room, Tola turned to him, determination in her eyes. "I'll help you, Albert. I'll get the documents from Tolu." Albert studied her carefully. "It won't be easy." Tola exhaled deeply. "I know, but I need to see for myself what kind of person my sister really is." For days, Tola observed Tolu, searching for any clue that could lead her to the documents Albert needed. Tolu was careful, never leaving anything out in the open, never discussing sensitive matters in public. But then, Tola noticed something. Every evening, Tolu disappeared into a restricted area of her company's headquarters, guarded by only a few trusted men. No one was allowed inside. One night, Tola followed from a distance, watching as Tolu entered through a hidden doorway in the basement. Tola's heart pounded. An underground chamber. It wasn't just an office. This was where Tolu hid her secrets. Tolu leaned against her desk, pressing her phone. She listened to one of her men. "She knows, boss. Tola has been snooping around." A slow smirk formed on Tolu's lips. "Good." Her man looked confused. "You're not angry?" Tolu stood, her sharp eyes glinting with something dangerous. "No. Let her go in. Let her take the documents." She picked up her phone, dialing a number. "If she wants to play hero, she unknowingly lead me straight to Albert." Tola's hands trembled as she clutched the folder, her heart racing. She had done it. The underground chamber had been filled with secrets, but she took only what mattered: proof of Tolu's crimes. As she hurried out of the building, she pulled out her phone and dialed Albert. "I have it," she whispered urgently. Albert's relieved sigh came through the line. "You found the documents?" "Yes. We need to meet." They quickly agreed on a secluded location in 2 days. Tola hung up, gripping the documents tightly. She had no idea that Tolu already anticipated her next move. The night was eerily quiet as Tola and Albert stood at the isolated meeting spot. Albert, still weak from his previous injuries, leaned against a tree while Tola clutched the folder tightly. We need to get these to the authorities fast, Albert said. Before Tola could respond, headlights flashed from the distance. A chill ran down her spine as several cars skidded to a stop, surrounding them. Tolu stepped out, dressed in black, her gun gleaming under the moonlight. Her gang followed, weapons raised. You really thought you could outsmart me, sister? Tolu's voice was cold. Tolu, please. A gunshot rang out. Albert fell to the ground, groaning in pain. Another shot this time, Tola screamed as a bullet grazed her arm. She clutched the wound, breathing heavily. Tolu raised her gun, aiming at Albert's head. This ends tonight. Before she could pull the trigger, sirens blared. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Drop your weapons. A voice commanded. The detective and his men stormed in, opening fire. Chaos erupted. Bullets flew as Tolu's men engaged in a deadly shootout. One by one, most of them fell. But in the confusion, Tolu and 2 of her men managed to slip away, vanishing into the shadows. Tola gasped for breath, clutching her bleeding arm as she watched her sister escape. Albert lay beside her, struggling to stay conscious. It wasn't over. Not yet. The dock was dimly lit, waves crashing softly against the ship as Tolu and her 2 remaining men hurried up the ramp. She glanced over her shoulder, her pulse racing. They were so close. We leave now, she ordered the crew. No delays. Just as the ship's engines roared to life, the sound of heavy footsteps filled the air. Freeze! Bright lights flashed. Guns cocked. The detective and his men surrounded the dock. Tolu's jaw clenched. She reached for her weapon, but the detective was faster. Drop it, Tolu. It's over. Her men hesitated, but with nowhere to run, they raised their hands in surrender. Tolu stood frozen for a moment before slowly lifting her hands. She locked eyes with the detective, a smirk playing on her lips. This isn't over, she whispered. The detective ignored her. Take them away. As the cuffs clicked around her wrists, Tolu's reign of terror finally came to an end. The courtroom was packed. Whispers filled the air as the judge prepared to deliver the final verdict. Tolu stood in the defendant's box, her expression unreadable. She showed no remorse, no fear, just the same cold confidence she always carried. Her parents sat in the front row, their faces filled with grief. Their once beloved daughter, the successful businesswoman they had been so proud of, was now exposed as a ruthless killer. Tola sat beside them, her arm still bandaged from the gunshot wound. She held their mother's trembling hand as silent tears rolled down her cheeks. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Tolu Williams, for the murder of the Adesanya family and multiple others, as well as numerous criminal offenses. This court sentences you to death. Gasps rippled through the room. Tolu stood still, her smirk gone. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Was it fear, regret? As the guards led her away, she turned slightly, locking eyes with Tola. A slow, eerie smile crossed her lips before she disappeared through the doors. Their parents wept silently. Tola lowered her head. It was over, but the scars would remain forever. Albert sat behind his desk, his fingers lightly tapping on the surface. Across from him, Tola sat silently, her eyes searching his face for any sign of warmth. The past few weeks had been a storm neither of them could have imagined, but now that it was over, reality settled in. Thank you, Tola, Albert said, his voice steady but distant. If not for you, I wouldn't be here today. Tola forced a small smile, but the pain in her chest was unbearable. I only did what was right. Albert sighed, looking away. I know, but I can't do this. Tola's heart sank. Do what? He finally met her gaze. Be with you. Every time I see you, I remember what Tolu did. She wiped out my entire family, Tola. She tried to kill me twice. I know you're nothing like her, but I can't separate the 2 of you in my mind. Tola's throat tightened. Albert, He shook his head gently. It's not your fault, but I can't pretend. Seeing you will always bring back those memories. He swallowed hard. I wish you happiness, Tola, you deserve it. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted to argue, to make him understand, but deep down, she knew he was right. She stood up, wiping her face quickly. Goodbye, Albert. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the office. As she stepped onto the street, the tears came freely. It was over, not just Tolu's reign of terror, but her love for Albert, and there was nothing she could do to change it.